I don't. Running up here, some back here, and then there's a sharpener right up here. Okay, guys, so last week we learned how to like add polynomials. We learned how to multiply them. We learned how to subtract them. And today what we're gonna do is learn how to divide them. And today we learn the first way I don't think you'll think is hard. The second way is kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest. And then tomorrow we learn an easier way. However, the easy way only works for one type of division problem. So that's why we can't just show you that one way. So as I said, there's 3 different types of problems with dividing. The other thing too, if you guys would think about this as we're going through today, I'm gonna be gone Thursday, Friday. So I have to kind of make my plans by tomorrow at the end of the day. If after you think about what you learned last week, did we learn just Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday? And then what we learned, or I think we learned Tuesday, or I don't know, was it 3 days of new stuff last week? And then we have today and tomorrow. I need you guys to think about, actually, we learned 3 days last week. We spent 2 days on section 4.1. Then we did that binomial thing with the Pascal's triangle. And then we're learning 2 new days today. Think about if you'd rather have just 1 practice quiz in your quiz Friday, or if you'd rather have 2 practice quizzes in your quiz on Monday. Completely up to you guys. So if you change your mind, I think we decided on quiz on Friday. If you change your mind, let me know. Okay, so the first way I do not think you'll think is bad. You will have a polynomial on the top divided by what's called a monomial, which is just something with 1 term. And in this, what you're gonna do is you're gonna write each thing on top over each thing on the bottom, okay? And as you get good at this, you probably could simplify things in your head without doing this. But I will always write it like this first. And then what you do once you write those, you just basically have 3 separate division problems, okay? And this we did last week. So if it's 15/5, those numbers you just reduce. What's 15 divided by 5? 3. And then you think if you have 10 R's on top and 4 R's on the bottom, do you guys remember what you do with those exponents? Do you add them? Do you multiply them? Do you subtract them? You subtract them. And then where you put R to the 6th is where the biggest number exponent is. 10 is bigger than 4, so that means your R to the 6th goes on top. Nothing is going to be on the bottom of that one, okay? Then we go minus 10 over 5 is just 10 divided by 5, which is 2. We have 8 R's on top, 4 on the bottom. We subtract them. 8 minus 4 is 4. And that R to the 4th is going to be on top because the 8 is on top. And then this last one, 40 divided by 5 is 8. We have 2 R's on top. We have 4 R's on the bottom. 4 minus 2 is 2. So we have 2 R's. Because the 4 is on the bottom, we actually have to put the R's on the bottom. You're going to find most of the time your variables are going to be more on the top in this type of question, but you can have them end up on the bottom. Okay, so this whole thing would be your answer. All right, so this one again, you're going to set it up kind of as 3 different problems. Like I said, if you can do it without writing it as 3 separate problems, that's okay. But I'm just going to always set it up like this. All right, so when you look at each of these, you're going to think 6 divided by 3 is 2. And by the way, I should just mention, in case you have something like this, if that was 6 over 4, you would reduce that fraction, okay? The ones that, all the examples I'm going to be going over, you can just divide it to get the whole number. But if that was something like 6 over 4, you would reduce that fraction and you'd end up with 3 over 2. Because I think on the quiz and the practice quiz, you might have something like that. Now we have 4 X's on top, 1 X on the bottom. So we subtract that and we end up with 3 X's on top. We have 3 Y's on top, 1 Y on the bottom. We subtract, so we're left with 2 Y's on top. 12 divided by 3 is 4. We have 1 X on the bottom, 3 on the top. 3 minus 1 is 2, so we're going to have X squared on top. We have 2 Y's on top, 1 Y on the bottom. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we have 1 Y on the top. 18 divided by 3 is 6. We have 2 X's on top, 1 X on the bottom. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we have 1 X on the top. These Y's, we have 1 Y on top and 1 Y on the bottom. So basically you can just think that those cross out and you're just left with no Y's. So that would be your answer. Okay. Do you guys get that? Do you want to see another one like that, or is that okay? Are you okay with that? Okay. So back when you guys first learned division, and you may not even really remember this, but do you guys remember doing division? And I think you learned it this way. I guess I haven't checked with an elementary teacher, but did you guys go like 7 goes into 9 how many times? And 7 goes into 9 once. And 1 times 7 is 7. And then do you remember subtracting? And 9 minus 7 is 2. Did you guys do this? Does that look familiar? So, and then do you remember bringing this 3 down then? And then looking at how many times does 7 go into 23? And you're looking at like 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. You want to get that biggest multiple that's just below 23, okay? Well, 7 times 3 is 21, so I'm gonna put a 3 here, and I'd look at 3 times 7 is 21, and then I subtract it, okay? And 23 minus 21 is 2. Now, when I was in elementary school years and years and years ago, we wrote our answer as 13 remainder 2. Did you guys do that? Okay. Another way to write that is you can say 13 plus 2, whatever's down here, over whatever you divided it by. Okay, that's another way to do that. And the reason I'm showing you this is how we have to do our long division with polynomials. Okay. We're gonna skip B and we're gonna go to C. And in this one, the only way this one is different is that we have in this first one, we were only dividing by 1 digit, and we were able to divide that 1 digit into our first thing. So we put our number above the first thing. Okay. When you have 2 terms, what happens is you're going to go to your second term, and this right here is where you're going to put your first number. If you had a 3-digit number, you'd go over 3 spots and your first digit would go right here. Okay. So then you want to think, what times 25 is going to be the biggest number that's less than 63? And it would be 2. 2 times 25 is 50. And then it's important that you understand you subtract that. Okay. 62 minus 50 is 12. And then you bring this 3 down. Okay. And then you look at, you're going to put your number here now. What times 25 would be the biggest number I could multiply? That it would be just less than 123. Well, 5 times 25 is 125, and that's too big. And 4 times 125 obviously is 100. So I'm going to want to use the 4. Okay, 4 times 25 is 100. And again, you subtract. So that would be 23. And then you bring the 1 down. Okay. And we would look at what times 25 gives me 231. Well, 8 times 25 is 200. 9 times 25 is 225. And we actually could do that because 225 is less than 231. So then we put a 9 here and we'd go 9 times 25 is 225. And we'd subtract again and we'd get 6. And then the way that we would write our answer is, like we talked about in elementary school, you probably said remainder 6. But in here, what we're going to do is we'd say 249 plus, it would be your remainder over what you're dividing by. Okay. So the reason I'm showing you this is that that's the same process we do with polynomials. Okay. So if you look here, this is the part that I was telling you guys that is kind of confusing, to be honest. So what you're going to do, whatever you're dividing by, goes out here. And then you do your division symbol. And here's another thing you have to remember. If they're skipping any of the powers of x, so if you notice there's an x to the third, there's an x squared, there's an x, and then there's a constant. Nothing is missing there. so I don't have to put in any zeros. But let's say they didn't have an x squared term. You would have to put in 0x squared for that term. Any term or power of that variable that's missing, you have to put a 0 in. But for us, we're just going to write it because nothing's missing. So we'd go minus 8x squared plus 4x minus 9. Okay. Now, because this has two terms, that means that our number that we're going to multiply that by goes above the second term. And what you think about is what would you have to multiply x by to get this first term? What times x would give us x to the third? Do you guys get that? It would be x squared, right? So what I would do then is I would go x squared times x, which is x to the third. These two are always going to be the same because that's how you're getting rid of it. Okay. Then you also have to multiply the x squared times this. And x squared times a negative 4 is minus 4x squared. Okay. Then what you do is we have to subtract this. And we have to subtract both of these. So what happens is you change your sign of this as well as that. Okay, so you always change the sign on both of them. If there was 3 things there, you'd change the sign on all 3. And then you would add going down. What's going to happen when you add going down is these are going to cancel. If they don't, then you did something wrong. And then negative 8x squared plus 4x squared is negative 4x squared. And then what you're going to do is think, what do I have to put here so that when I multiply by x, I get negative 4. Oh, sorry, I have to bring this term down first. So I'm going to bring that plus 4x down. Okay. Then I have to think, what times x gives me negative 4x squared? And that's a negative 4. Okay. X, negative 4x. A negative 4x times x gives me negative 4x squared. These two are always going to be the same. Then I take negative 4x times negative 4, and that is what? Plus, it's a positive 16x. Okay. Then what you have to do is change the signs on both of these. So what we would do, this first one would become a positive. The second one is going to be a negative. Okay, so you have to change the sign on both. This is going to cross out. If it doesn't, you've done something wrong. And then you have 4x minus 16x, which should be negative 12x. And then what we're going to do is bring down our last term, which is the negative 9. Okay. When I do that, what I put here is so that this times that gives me the negative 12x. So what times x gives me negative 12x? That is a negative 12. Now, one thing I have to say too, if this was not negative, make sure you put a plus in front of it. So each of these terms always has to be connected by a plus or minus. So if the term is not negative, make sure you put a plus there. So negative 12 times x is negative 12x. Negative 12 times a negative 4 is a positive 48. Okay. And then that last thing you do always is you change both of their signs. So this becomes a plus, this becomes a minus. And negative, these cancel. -9 minus 48 is going to be -57. Okay. And when you write your answer, it's always going to be this, which is x squared minus 4x minus 12 plus your remainder, which is -57 over whatever you're dividing by, which is x minus 4. So you write this, and remember you have to have a plus or minus between each one, plus the remainder over what you divided by. This whole thing is your answer. Okay. So let's try another one like this. So this one is a little shorter. We have 2y minus 1 divided into 6y squared plus y minus 2. Okay. Again, because we have the two terms, that first term is that we put up here is going to go over your second one over. So what I think about is what times 2y gives me 6y squared. So I need a 3 because 3 times 2 is 6. And if I have one y, I need another y here. So y times y is y squared. So 3y times 2y is 6y squared. And then 3y times a -1 is -3y. Okay. What do you have to remember to do now? Change the sign. So this is going to become a minus. This is going to become a plus. This is going to cancel. And the other thing I should tell you guys too, if these two cannot be added together, like say this one said y squared and this one said y, if they didn't have the same variable, that also means you did something wrong. So this is 1y plus 3y, which is 4y. And then I'm going to bring this down. So I'm going to bring that whole -2. So if it has a minus sign in front of it, you have to bring that minus sign. And then what you're thinking is what times 2y gives me 4y, which is 2. What do you think I should put in front of it? A plus sign. Okay. So 2 times 2y is 4y. 2 times a -1 is -2. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do next is change both signs. So this changes to a minus, this changes to a plus. Notice this cancels, which it always should, and this cancels. So in this one, you have a remainder of 0. If you have a remainder of 0, all that means is that this is your whole answer. So 3y plus 2 would be your answer. You could put plus 0 over this, but you don't have to do that if your remainder is 0. Okay, so this one has 3 terms that we're dividing by. So we have x squared plus 2x into x to the 4th minus x to the 3rd minus 8x plus 8. Okay. Oh, I needed to say something before I did this. So one important thing that you have to do when you're writing this down is you have to look at, is there a power of x that they're missing? And is there in this one? Yeah, x squared. So that means that I need to erase this. And in for the x squared, I would put 0x squared. Okay, then I have my x term and I have my 8. if you forgot to do that, you would notice it because when you go to subtract, you wouldn't have the same variables. But you always want to look at, I have x to the fourth, I have x to the third, I don't have an x squared, I have an x, I have a constant, so that means I have to put that 0 in. Now, because of the fact that I have 3 terms, that means my first thing is going to go right here, okay? So I want to think, what times x squared would give me x to the fourth? Do you guys get that? That would be x squared. X squared times x squared is x to the fourth. And remember, these are always going to be the same. Then I take x squared times 2x, which is going to be a positive 2, and I have 2 x's here, 1 x there. So I'm going to have x to the third. Again, these two should have the same variable. They both are x to the thirds. Then x squared times 4 is going to give me a plus 4x squared. Now, if I forgot to put that 0x squared there, you would notice it here because you would have a negative 8x here and an x squared here. They would not be the same variable. You could not combine them. And that would give you a hint that you forgot to put that in. Okay. So now we have that, and now we're going to draw our line, and we're going to switch the signs on all 3. So this becomes a minus, this becomes a minus, and that becomes a minus. Okay. Then what we do is we start adding going down. Well, these cross out. Negative x to the third minus 2x to the third is negative 3x to the third. 0x squared minus 4x squared is really just like 0 minus 4x squared, which would just be negative 4x squared. And again, because you have 3 terms here, you have to have 3 terms down here. So what that tells us is I need to bring down 1 more term. And then I think, what times x squared gives me a negative 3x to the third? Bless you. Well, I need a negative 3 to get that negative 3 here. I have x squared here, so I'd need 1 more x up here. Negative 3x times x squared is negative 3x to the third. Negative 3x times 2x is negative 6. And then x times x is x squared. Okay. And then negative 3x times 4 is negative 12x. Then what we do again is we have to change all 3 signs. Don't forget that. So this becomes a plus, this becomes a plus, this becomes a plus. The first 2 are going to cross out. A negative 4x squared plus 6x squared is 2x squared. Negative 8x plus 12x is 4x. And then we're going to bring down our last thing, which is a plus 8. And then we have 1 more thing to do up here. So I have to think, what times x squared gives me 2x squared? That's going to be plus 2. 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times 2x is plus 4x. And 2 times 4 is plus 8. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my line. This is going to change to a minus. This is going to change to a minus. And then on the 8, that'll change to a minus. Okay, so if I look here, these end up canceling. 4x minus 4x, that cancels. 8 minus 8, that cancels. So this is another one where we have a remainder of 0. So our answer would be this top part. So this right here is our answer. Okay. We have one more. Let's see if it's different. What do you guys think? Do you need to see another one? Should we? Everybody okay? Okay. So we're gonna do a worksheet. I will hand it out. And then I will also put a key up on the podium. I don't know if the key is in there or not. Let me know if it's not. I don't need to take it. Oh, you didn't bring it too. Okay, no problem. Okay, no problem. Love you.